Chapter 23, and we start off with an excerpt from Dr. Ishiro Serizawa's notebook. In many myths and ancient tales, the world begins with a battle between the gods. In Sumerian myth, the dragon goddess Tiamat fought Anu. In Greece, the Titans battled their children, the gods. Chipachli, a sea monster, fought the four gods, Huitzilopochtli, Chitli, Quetzalcoatl, Tezcatlipoca, and Zyktotec in ancient Aztec myth. In such stories, very often the world is said to be created from the remains of the defeated. Other cultures place the war of the gods at the end of time, Ragnarok, Armageddon. I believe both are true. Creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin. The gods go to war, a new world emerges. The new world becomes old, out of balance, and the gods fight again. Emma glanced back at Monster Zero and made a quick, brutally honest calculation. Mark and Maddie weren't going to make it if the Offspray waited until she was aboard. Even if they managed to get a few yards off the ground, it was hopeless. Monster Zero would follow the Orca wherever it went, if it was turned on. If she turned it off, he would probably kill them anyway. Either way, he would return to finish off Godzilla. Unless she stopped him. So, she quit running, and instead watched the Offspray continue to rise. "Mom!" Maddie shouted. Emma focused on Mark's surprised face, saw him take it in, and understand what she was doing. "I love you," she said, knowing they couldn't hear it. She said it more for herself than for him. She had kept those feelings walled off for so long. But it all came back so effortlessly now, the good times, falling in love a whole new way when they first saw Andrew, held him, that tiny little primate, and again when Maddie came along. Nothing was ever perfect. There were always tough times and arguments, but they'd had balance then, so when something went wrong, they'd always recovered. But losing Andrew had broken that equilibrium, and they never found another. Mark had blamed her for their son's death. He never said so, but she knew. It was her job that took them to San Francisco. Mark wanted to stay in Boston. They could have, but the San Francisco offer had been too hard for her to resist. It was unfair that he felt that way, and part of her had hated him for that. Only now did she realize that she had blamed herself for all of it. That was why she worked so hard to make it right, out of guilt. She couldn't forgive herself, and in her heart, she didn't believe Mark could either. Still carrying the Orca, she rushed to the Humvee, laid the machine on the passenger seat, started the engine, and gunned it, driving away from her family as fast as she could manage through the wreckage of Boston. A glance back showed it was working. Ghidorah took a sharp turn, dismissed the Offspray coming directly after her. "You won't touch them, you son of a bitch," she fought. "You won't touch my family." Mark saw Emma's lips form the words. He saw her expression and believed her, that she still loved him, and he knew what she was about to do. Maddie understood too. "No! Mom! Stop! Stop!" she shouted. Mark was still at the door. He leaned forward towards his retreating wife. He couldn't lose her again. He could jump, wrestle her into the Offspray, or something. They weren't too high yet. Foster might not come back for Emma, but she would come back for him. But the others grabbed him, pulled him back. He could only watch helplessly as Emma boarded the Humvee and drove away into the ruins of Boston. As the Offspray rose higher, and Ghidorah turned to follow her, as she had surely planned. Emma was right, of course. Leading the monster away was the only way to save Maddie. He just wished he'd thought of it first. "Give him hell, girl," he thought, as hot tears of pride, love, and loss burned at the corners of his eyes. "Daddy," Maddie said, through her tears, hugging him hard. He hugged her back. His girl, his Maddie. Death might break them apart, but nothing else would. Emma didn't know how far she would get. Far enough, she hoped, for the Osprey to vanish into the smoke and ash, for Mark and Maddie to fly to safety. Was Godzilla dead? When she'd last seen him, he was limp, unmoving. If he was, there was nothing to stop Ghidorah. The other Titans would fall in line with his will, and they would continue terraforming the Earth into whatever it was Ghidorah wanted. But if Mark and Maddie survived, Chen and a few others, then it still wasn't over. Mark could build a new Orca, a better one, or maybe what was left of Monarch could come up with something new. A bioweapon, a drug, a way to short-circuit Ghidorah's energy attack. At least there was hope. Hope that someone could undo some part of the terrible damage she had unleashed. She wouldn't be part of it, or see it done. Hope would have to be enough for her, and love. She dodged the Humvee around piles of rubble and the few buildings still standing, working for every second she could get. The Orca continued throbbing away, and Ghidorah was right there. She spun the wheel, careened around a pile of burning debris, straightened up, pushed the pedal all the way down. Everything went gold and then white, as pain like she had never known jagged through her body, striking every nerve like a match. The agony didn't last long. As it faded, she was away and rolling, bouncing until the Humvee fetched up against something and stopped. She'd been thrown clear, she realized. Not that that meant much. She couldn't feel anything, but her vision was still clear. Ghidorah stooped towards her, sniffing. She wasn't scared. There wasn't anything else he could do to her. "Come on, you bastard," she thought. Behind Ghidorah, an orange glow appeared, a colossal shape eclipsing the burning city. Emma smiled. She'd done it, given Godzilla enough time to recover, time to restore the balance. "Long live the king," she gasped out. Godzilla, his body steaming, his dorsal fin pulsing red, burning like a dying sun, charging towards Ghidorah. She couldn't breathe anymore. That was okay. That was fine. She closed her eyes, saw Mark and Madison, and Andrew. It was enough. As the Osprey rose above the battlefield, Mark's gaze tracked the Humvee, vanishing behind debris and drifting smoke, but reappearing. "Jesus God," Stanton said. "Look!" "Fucking A!" Barnes said. He followed their gaze to the crater where Godzilla's body lay. Only he wasn't in it anymore. Massively wounded, he had pulled himself up and was staggering after Ghidorah. First uncertainly, but then with stronger and greater strides. He was glowing red now, pulsing with an inner radiance that shone through seams in his scales, leaked from his eyes as if his heart was the core of a red giant star about to go supernova. Mark tore his gaze away, looking for Emma. She could still make it. He didn't see the Humvee, but he saw Ghidorah, and then, just ahead of him, racing out from behind a crushed building, the tiny vehicle. Ghidorah came down on her like a hammer, blasting the Humvee with his lightning breath. Energy arced all around it. The car went flying. Then Ghidorah blotted out his view, head swinging downward to where he'd seen the Humvee stop. The Osprey's rotors flipped over, and they were an airplane now, plowing as hard and fast as the craft was capable. Mark felt his ears pop as they gained elevation. Below, Ghidorah whipped around towards Godzilla, blasting him with lightning. But the big lizard just took it, absorbed it, and kept coming, pulsing brighter and faster. Again and again, the three-headed dragon struck, but Godzilla, despite his wounds, didn't even slow down. He collided with Ghidorah like a walking mountain, wrapping him up in his forelimbs, grabbing him close as his dorsal fin pulsed faster and faster, ignoring the dragon's attacks as he thrashed in his grasp. The pulses were now so fast, they were almost continuous. They sheeted through Ghidorah like hard wind, ripping his wings and burning them away as if they were made of tissue paper. Ghidorah screamed and blasted Godzilla with all three heads. But then another wave of radiation pulsed out and disintegrated two of the dragon's heads. Ghidorah stumbled to the ground, withering as Godzilla stepped on his chest. And as another pulse built within the great lizard, Ghidorah's remaining head shrieked. Mark shielded Madison with his body and tried not to look, desperately hoping they were out of range. He saw through his closed eyelids the flash that engulfed what remained of Boston. He held Maddie tighter as the osprey suddenly jumped through the air. The blood drained from his head, and they were in freefall. But only for a moment. The osprey slapped down onto a thermal, her wings caught, and they were flying again. A little shaky maybe, but well enough. When Mark opened his eyes, he saw a mushroom cloud lifting from Boston. The osprey started a wild turn around the city as the cloud continued to lift, and it gradually began clearing below. Through the smoke, downtown Boston was a wasteland, a blackened ruin. Burning streets, twisted steel beams. He was reminded of the ruins of the city beneath the sea. In a few thousand years, would there be anyone left to wonder what had happened to the civilization he had been born into? The osprey buzzed a little closer, and he began to discern the crater where he'd last seen the two titans. But there was no sign of Godzilla and Ghidorah. Had they been completely atomized? If so, what would that mean? Without a king or a queen, what would the other titans do? Something began to shift beneath the wreckage. Something big. As it emerged, Mark waited for Godzilla's familiar dorsal spines. Instead, golden horns appeared. Then, the scaly head and snout. Ghidorah. Oh, for God's sakes, Mark thought. Is it really impossible to kill this thing? But then the head rose up further, although its neck looked weird. Not the slender snake neck of Ghidorah, but really thick, green neck. Then he understood. As Godzilla rose up from the ruins, with Ghidorah's head in his mouth, Ghidorah's eyes snapped open. He was wriggling in Godzilla's jaws, lightning flashing, trying desperately to escape. Godzilla shook it like an alligator would, as if trying to eat it. But then a blast of blue energy erupted from the saurian's maw, and Ghidorah's final head disintegrated in withering atomic radiance. The blast ceased. A little bolt of lightning crackled around Godzilla's mouth. Godzilla had won. They had won. But the world was changed forever. So many cities destroyed. So many people dead. Things weren't just going to bounce back to the way they were. And maybe that was as it should be. If Emma was right, with Ghidorah gone, the global ecosystem would rebound. The ravaged places would become green. Forests would cover where Boston had been. The dying ocean reefs would thrive as they hadn't in hundreds of years. He hadn't wanted it to happen this way, but the eggs were broken. They needed to decide what kind of an omelet to make. It was the dawn of a new world, or the return of a very old one. Soon he would go and find his wife's body. He had no doubt she was dead. And he would grieve with his daughter, and together they would find out how they fit into this new era. He remembered what Chen said about dragons being creatures who might bring redemption, and they had for him. For Emma. Jesus, Stanton said. Good thing he's on our side. For now, Chen said. Dad, Madison said. Look. As more of the smoke cleared, they saw Godzilla was not alone after all. Rodan was back, along with a horror on 8 long spidery legs, a monster that looked like a bull with a mountain on his back, a knuckle-walking mammoth with tusks hundreds of feet long, and a six-legged hunchbacked Muto, like the one that had broken containment in Japan 5 years ago. Behind them filtered a flock of smaller forms that resembled pterodactyls, leafwings from Skull Island. Ghidorah's cavalry was a little late to save him, but they were here. It looked like this wasn't over after all. Godzilla glared at the newcomers and drew himself up for battle. Head up, arms ready to grapple. Battered and bruised he might be, but he was still ready to fight. The other monsters stopped their advance. They seemed to shriek from him, then bowed, each in their own way. They were standing down, acknowledging their alpha. Serizawa's natural order was restored. Godzilla drew back his head and roared until the heavens shook. Epilogue. I will not speak of Leviathan's limbs, its strength, and its grateful form. Who can strip off its outer coat? Who can penetrate its double coat of armor? Who dares open the doors of its mouth, ringed about with fearsome teeth? Its back has rows of shields tightly sealed together. Each is so close to the next that no air can pass between. They are joined fast to one another. They cling together and cannot be parted. Its snorting throws flashes of light. Its eyes are like rays of dawn. Flames steam from its mouth. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke pours from its nostrils, as from a boiling pot over burning reeds. Its breath sets coals ablaze, and flames dart from its mouth. Strength resides in its neck. Dismay goes before it. The folds of its flesh are tightly joined. They are firm and immovable. Its chest is hard as rock, hard as lower millstone. When it rises up, the mighty are terrified. They retreat before its thrashing. The sword that reaches it has no effect, nor does the spear or the dart or the javelin. Iron it treats like straw, and bronze like rotten wood. Arrows do not make it flee. Slingshots are like chaff to it. A club seems to it a piece of straw. It laughs at the rattling of the lance. Its undersides are broken potsherds, leaving a trail in the mud like threshing sledge. It makes the depths churn like a boiling cauldron and stirs up the sea like a pot of ointment. It leaves glistening wake behind it. One would think the deep had white hair. Nothing on earth is its equal. A creature without fear. It looks down on all that are haughty. It is king over all that are proud. Santiago led the men through the corridor. They had made him nervous, with their heavy boots and iron gazes. In particular, he did not like their leader. He had known men like this before, but these were not times for caution. The world was changed forever, as had been foretold. Many of his relations and old friends were dead, others were scattered to the four corners of the earth. He had been at sea when Rodan burst from his nest. He had weathered Ghidorah's storm and made safe harbor. Thus, he still had his boat and his fishing gear, but to what purpose? The waters were poisoned, and where would he take his catch? But again, luck had been with him. He'd made a good catch. Now these men had come to pay him for it. Or maybe they would kill him and his men and take it. They were dressed like soldiers, which in his experience often did not bode well. But what choice did he have? "It is a brave new world, my friend," he told the leader. "Such things as this have become much more valuable since the rise of the king." The leader said nothing. "It took 9 fishing boats to raise it," Santiago went on. "My men don't ask for much, just enough to relocate their families. They cannot fish here anymore. Everything is dead." They had reached the warehouse space where his men waited, nervous like him. The stench of death was worse than before. He flipped the lights on so they could see it, and prayed for the best. His men did the same, stepping away from it, crossing themselves. Even in death, covered in seaweed and barnacles, his once golden scales dulled by purification. Ghidorah's head was terrifying. He had seen it happen, seen Godzilla tear it off and drop it in the sea, and he knew those seas better than the faces of his children. The leader, Jonah, stepped into the light. He stared at the severed head with a most unsettling expression, and then he smiled. But there was no mirth there. It was the sort of smile his grandfather used to call La Sonrisa del Diablo, the devil's grin. "We'll take it," Jonah said.